there's a lot of checks and balances before we actually start the listing to make sure there's not a false start and we're not setting the wrong expectations with the seller. I'm a firm believer that if everyone understands what's going on and agrees to it, you're doing fair business and no one's at fault. We had an uphill battle, and I kind of see it the same way with wholesale, where you need to be able to create some compelling momentum to get consistent conversions. Don't get greedy. Time is going to kill all deals. If you have an upset seller, understand something went left somewhere and you're ultimately responsible.
Welcome back to another episode of the Austin Zaback Show. Today we got the Novation King, the real Novation King on the show. And, his name's obviously Rich Wonders. You probably heard of him. You probably seen the content on your IG. And dude, you've done a lot of novations. We were talking a bit before the show. Which if you're watching, you don't know what a novation is, like we'll break it down in a little while. But dude, novations have become really popular lately, and you've done over 300 of them. You've lost track at some point. Obviously, you've got a family, and you're just crushing it, man. And I just appreciate you being here, bro. And I know you brought a bunch of cookies for my team. I really appreciate that. I'll bet you when we walk out of here, they will be gone, by the way.
Dude,
so hopefully you didn't want any.
No,
okay,
man.
cool. Moj will most likely save you one and me one. We'll see. We'll find out when we get out of here.
Nice.
But dude, I appreciate you being on the show, man. It's obviously an honor to have you here, and I'm excited to dive into it.
Dude, I appreciate it, man. And dude, beautiful office. Your operation's incredible, man. So yeah, I'm honored to be on here, bro.
Awesome, dude. So, for people watching and listening, let's take them back a little bit. Like, how did you get into Novations? And then I'd also love for you to explain for a beginner, right? Like, what is a Novation? And you hear a lot of people talking about it, right? Like, as a matter of fact, you follow like Ryan Pineda?
Yeah.
Okay. So even Ryan, he's been talking about Novation a lot lately, right? And we've done a couple Novations. We were talking before the show.
Yeah.
How did you get into that game? And then what is a Novation?
Sure. So I first learned about Novations when I was working with Corey Geary. So he learned about it in like a high dollar mastermind he was in. And basically they had a pitch for it, but sales and acquisition has always kind of been my strong point. And Corey had started a mastermind, and I had started a new pitch for it. And basically he was playing my calls in the mastermind, and things kind of caught on, and I started getting some attention like for my Novation pitch, because it was kind of like a unique approach, right? Now, and this was probably about a little bit over 2 years ago this happened. What is a Novation? So Novation itself just means replacement of contract. So the term itself is pretty ambiguous and it's kind of broad. Now, the way that we use Novations is we list wholesale deals on the market, and the Novation agreement occurs when our third-party buyer is using a loan. So it's there's two parts to it. There's listing the deal publicly and having the seller understand that. And then the second part is being able to sell to a retail buyer if the deal's a fit for a retail buyer. So the beauty of that is it opens up like a huge spectrum of potential buyers that you're not going to get with cash only or off-market type of deals.
Yeah. Like, elaborate on that a little bit, right? Because I think, there's a lot of people that are going to be watching that are that's just going to go over their head, right? So, I obviously understand it, but, what are the logistics of that, right? So obviously basic wholesaling, get a property under contract, you're the buyer, you get a contract with the seller to keep it simple, right? And then you assign or double close that contract, AKA sell your contract to a cash buyer for a profit, right?
Right.
Wholesaling 101, So Novation then is, so when you talk about like the word Novation, are we talking about like attorney in fact? Are we talking about power of attorney? Like, what are we why wouldn't the seller just list the property with an agent on the market?
Right. So the sellers that we're speaking to, normally they have some sort of situation or some sort of issue going on, because these are the same sellers that are looking for cash offers, right? Because we're doing traditional wholesale marketing for the most part. There's not really a way to market for Novations. We're marketing for motivation. So whether you're cold calling, direct mail, PPC, we're looking for people that are wanting to sell their house. And when we take them through our negotiation process for a cash offer and find out that it's not going to be a match, maybe the property's too nice and they can't take a big enough discount for us to profitably sell it to a cash buyer, right? Or there's lots of different situations where it won't work in the wholesale box, but they're still not looking for the traditional experience, right? They're not looking to list it with an agent. Maybe they had a bad experience. Maybe there's some minor work that needs to be done for whatever reason, right?
Yep.
So basically what we promise them is a hands-off white glove experience where they know what they're going to be netting. They understand we're going to be marketing to and selling to third party. And we just promise to deliver the result on the silver platter. So what they're looking for is certainty and peace of mind. So for most people, like, this is not something where you take like a normal home seller and then turn them into a Novation contract. There's like, we're not taking these deals from agents. These are deals where they're banging their head against the wall, rattling around from wholesaler to wholesaler. No one can give them an acceptable offer. And then they come into our pipeline, and then we have a perfect solution because they're looking for the hands-off experience, but they can't necessarily take 50 cents on the dollar or whatever is going to be required to get it off market.
Sure. Yeah, no, I love that. And so then obviously, I want to just really get into the nitty gritty of it, right? Because I want people to really take a lot of value away from it. Is there a difference when they go through you in terms of like, what if one of the objections, like the reasoning that they don't want to list it with an agent, is they don't want to show it a bunch? Like, do you guys like tell them like, hey, we only need X amount of showings? Like, how do you navigate through that? Is that a benefit that you kind of sell them on?
Yeah. So it's always like a real consultative approach. And even when they say they don't want showings, normally they just don't want the worst case scenario of people coming through all the time, being on call. So normally what we'll do is depending on the situation, we'll find a couple days that work, block off some time. Often like I'll Zelle them or send them a gift card so they can go and buy lunch or dinner or go be entertained for the day, right? Yep. I always try to do small things to kind of make their life easier. Because I realize like this is the reason they choose to go with us is for the experience. So you kind of have to look at it through like a service mindset of, okay, how can I give them the optimal experience? So, if they want 0 showings, like we have a price where we can say, hey, look, if you agree to this price, there will be 0 showings.
Yeah.
Like we will buy it sight unseen. Now you're probably going to cringe when you see what that number is.
Yeah.
But, we can find a happy medium where often like if we have a full weekend day and maybe like 1 or 2 good time block windows during the week, normally that's more than sufficient because we're pricing the property aggressively. So we're looking for early traction. We don't try to shoot for the moon or shoot for the stars and land on the moon with these. Like we look to have it get an offer within 2 weeks. And we set the expectations with the realtors that we hire from the beginning too, where they understand that. We're also crowdsourcing their opinions when we're interviewing the other realtors to make sure, like we ask them, hey, in your professional opinion, where do you think we would need to price this to sell in 30 days or less, get an acceptable offer? So there's a lot of checks and balances before we actually start the listing to make sure there's not a false start and we're not setting the wrong expectations with the seller. Because normally within a few showing windows, like we want an acceptable offer coming in. So it's on a case-by-case basis. And some sellers, like if they're retired, they're cool. They're like, hey, look, whenever you have someone that needs to see it, by all means, let me know. Because it's different once they understand you're selling to a third party. When we're bringing showings, it's reaffirming their expectations because they're like, oh, good. They said they can bring buyers. They're bringing buyers. But when someone's being promised, hey, I'm the cash buyer. I just need to get my contractor in there. The contractor gets in there. Oh, I just need to get my agent in there.
Yeah.
Like people are trying to shuffle through cash buyers and labeling them different things. Each time they come through, it makes them more uncertain because they're like, wow, are you buying the house or not? Like, why do you keep need to seeing it? Why do you keep need to go through it, right? So it's different when your interests are aligned and the expectations are aligned. There's a lot more cooperation and you can be much more transparent with everything. And they're actually like rooting you along. Because they want the deal done. And, we foster a lot of goodwill through our whole sales process and just our kind of empathetic approach with them, where we're really tailoring everything around what we think is going to meet their needs and put them at ease, basically. These are the type of people that are going to go for this type of experience. Like if someone that just wants their house sold for the most amount of money, they're going to hire a traditional agent. They're going to stage it. They're going to go through the normal open house process. So this is basically an alternative where they can get most of the convenience of a cash offer and then get a good portion of the money of a retail sale. But we're kind of in the middle dealing with the dirty work that they don't necessarily want to do, including handling repairs and things like that, helping them move.
Yeah, you're doing the whole thing for them.
Yeah, it's like that's why we call it a concierge service, where essentially we're just coordinating the whole transaction and bringing the best people in from each angle, the best realtor, the best people to fix things if need be, the best cleaning crew, and we just kind of orchestrate it.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the legality, right? If, somebody's watching, we're for sure going to have, somebody is watching right now and they're like, what you're talking about is illegal, right?
For sure.
And we're going to have that. So let's just talk about that while everybody's, kind of thinking about it. What are the do's and don'ts of Novation?
Okay. So the most important thing is full disclosure. The seller needs to understand you're selling to a third party for a profit. Okay. You also need to have the correct paperwork. So the paperwork, and there's different opinions on what the correct paperwork is, but I'll just tell you the paperwork I use that we've done millions of dollars in transactions. I've never been sued once. Knock on wood, right? I'm going to jinx myself now, but never been sued. Never had a seller incredibly upset with me. You use a AB contract, which is a purchase and sale agreement.
Okay.
Very similar to a wholesale agreement that you'll see. It's like a 3-pager. It's got some additional language in there disclosing that we can use the MLS, and also some additional language disclosing that we can assign it or novate it to a third-party purchaser. In either such a case, the seller shall cooperate fully with signing the third-party buyer's offer. So there's a few things. Here's the red flags.
I don't know if you know this, but the majority of the views that we get are from people that are not subscribed. So do me a huge favor and subscribe if you like the podcast so far. Smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm, and let's just go ahead and get back to the interview.
You don't want to do a POA, a power of attorney, and sign the seller's offer on behalf of the buyer.
Okay.
So that's one thing you
and
don't want to do. Well, without trying to be a lawyer, because I'm definitely not, there's a few practical reasons why. One, the lender is going to say, who's this power of attorney? Do they have an interest in this? Is this the seller's grandson? Is this a investor? Why are they signing on behalf of the seller? It makes it look like you're doing something sneaky. And if the seller's not incapacitated, they're wondering, why are they hiding this information? It's just immediately raising red flags. Now, we've got plenty of deals done like that with only a few times it causing problems. But I'm a big believer that you should always find the path of least resistance and use it consistently. You never know when the lender is going to have a problem with that and can blow up the deal.
And you want to build a sustainable company.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So signing the seller's, signing on behalf of the seller for the offer, that's one red flag.
Okay.
Collecting the seller's proceeds, and believe it or not, there's actually people that teach that. I would not recommend that. Okay. That seems like a good way to get a district attorney involved. Even if you are not a bad actor, it makes you look a lot like one.
For sure.
So I would avoiding that. And then the third thing is just when people don't disclose and they try to be sneaky about it, even though it's in the contract, but they don't explain it to the seller, and they kind of try to just do it without them knowing it. I think ethically it doesn't sit well. And then also it's not really, I'm a firm believer that if everyone understands what's going on and agrees to it, you're doing fair business and no one's at fault.
Yep.
But when someone thinks you're doing one thing and then you're really doing something else, that's when you're setting yourself up to be in a bad situation where they're getting upset, they're feeling cheated, they're feeling scammed. And I feel like it's completely unnecessary. Yep. If you're a great communicator, you should be able to present what the true value is that we're bringing to them and let them agree with it or disagree.
Yep.
It may not be a fit for them. If they have a problem with you making money, then look, it's not going to be the right fit for it. But yeah, so legally speaking, we use a attorney in fact to list the properties. That's another instrument we use, and it's just a one-page authorization to sign listing docs.
Okay, so it's not a power of attorney; it's an attorney in fact.
Correct,
Okay.
and it's really more so just the authorization with them explicitly saying this person has the right to hire a realtor on my behalf and sign everything that has to do with the listing docs. Now, if there is a case like, for example, if they're the head of an estate or if it's like a probate type of situation, then I'll normally have the seller sign the listing agreements because you can't technically be an attorney in fact of someone that's already like a representative. Yeah, right?
Yeah.
You can't double dip on that. So there are cases where I will have them sign the listing docs, and really, if the attorney in fact ever became an issue, I guarantee you, I just have the seller sign the listing docs every time.
Yeah.
Like it wouldn't be a point of friction because they already stand what's going on. So those are really the main things that'll get you in hot water. And then, here's a third thing: using flat fee brokers. This will raise so many red flags with buyers agents. It'll create a whole new point of friction where it no longer becomes about them wanting to buy the house, more so than them trying to decipher your whole business model and you justifying your existence. And sometimes they feel a way that you're acting as an agent because, I mean, you are taking all the buyer's agent calls, you're negotiating with them. I mean, if you're not acting like an agent, you're dressing up for one for Halloween and you're going through the motions. Like you're pretty damn near close to it. So that's why I like hiring the local agents. It completely sidesteps that. And like the more I've done the business, like as a wholesaler, right? I was always taught like agents, most of them don't know what they're doing. They're incompetent. They make their money for just putting stuff on the MLS. And the more deals I've done, I realize like that's completely false. Like now, are the majority of agents great agents? I mean, we could say, are the majority of wholesalers great wholesalers? Probably not, right? But to have a truly competent, great agent, like it is extremely difficult.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a high level skill set.
For sure.
And like all the agents I work with, like I sit back and say, like all the agents I work with now, I'm like, I can't do what they're doing. You know what I mean? And they know all the local laws. They have all the local connections. They are such a key part to what we do. I think it's incredibly arrogant to think, oh, well, I can just do that. Like I'm going to know every market just like they would, and think that you're somehow saving money by not paying the 3%. The opportunity cost and the time consumption and everything that goes with that far outweighs like whatever commission they make. So
valuable, dude. I mean, gosh, I can't even begin to tell you how valuable, what you're talking about is, because it's so true, right? I'm an agent. I run a big team. I'm also a wholesaler, and they're both very difficult. I get asked a lot, like, which one is like easier or whatever, and I'm like, dude, I don't know. Like, they're both pretty hard, neither of them are easy. And, they're both very different. Acting as an agent or acting as a wholesaler, I mean, dude, they both have their thing, right? And so I totally agree with you on that, dude. I think that I love the idea of the novation too, right? And I like how, I mean, you clearly understand it at a really high level. What are the mistakes that you see? Obviously, you have, the people who are doing the power of attorney and they're doing all that crap, right? Like, do you think people are because I feel like the way that you have succeeded, one of the ways, is your white glove concierge approach, right? So, like, talk to me about that, because I feel like that's one thing for you to do and get really good at. It's another thing to train people how to do that, right? Because as we both know, training a sales guy, right, to really, like, build rapport with a homeowner and like get deep with them and like talk about football and like the whole thing, right? Because you got to get deep with people if you really want to deliver like a white glove type of service, right? So like, how have you been able to scale that, and get it to a point where I'm sure I'd imagine you have people helping you. Correct me if I'm wrong, to the point where you still are offering that level of, that white glove kind of concierge.
So yeah, I have 4 closers that work with me now that help me on deals. But I think the one thing that I learned when I sold Kirby vacuums door to door for like 9 years, right?
And I want to talk more about that in a minute.
But one thing I learned is, and my boss taught me this, and he was a top distributor for like 20 years, and he made several $1 million a year selling these Kirby vacuums, and he would take guys off the street with no sales experience, no business acumen, like you can imagine, there weren't college graduates lining up down the street to go sell Kirby vacuums door to door 6 days a week, 10, 12 hours a day, right? So it was people like how I was when I started that were down and out, and this was kind of like a last resort. So we had to have a training process where we could teach them, look, follow this exactly, say this exact script, do it in this exact order, do it the same way every single time. Because this is one thing he taught me, because when I first started there, I was naturally a good communicator, and I would find my own ways to do things. And he would tell me, he said, look, you know, you're having success because of your gift of gab. But he goes, look, do you ever want to be rich? He's like, do you think you're going to get rich by selling these? He goes, no. The way you're going to get rich is having a process that's easy for people to repeat and easy for people to do. Look at McDonald's. Look at any successful business. You need a repeatable process. So the whole sales process that I teach for doing novations, like I call it the Rainmaker method, the whole thing's set up to be very low friction, to be very consultative. It has all the built-in questions and responses to elicit the seller to divulge all the information we need to give them the perfect solution, right? So in order for us to give them the perfect solution, we really need to understand what their goals are, what their problems are, what they're trying to avoid, what they're trying to go towards. And the whole first third of the sales process, there's no negotiation, there's no pushback, there's zero friction. It's consultative, and it kind of just sets things up. And then when we do get in the negotiation phase, it's always us and the seller versus the data and the decision makers. So we're always positioning ourselves as a advocate for the seller, and I always position myself as a low-level non-decision maker that's basically just trying to put the deal together, that's just like a real person, where I'm not their adversary. You know, I'm on the same side. You know, we have limited resources. We can't bring on every deal, right? And I'm trying to figure out a way that we can make this work and where I think the decision makers will be. So the whole sales process is kind of tailored towards keeping them on our side, having very little headbutting and very little back and forth. And then we have a way to build up momentum and pitch it in a very compelling way at the end, where it's dramatic, and it's almost like reciting lines for a movie. And this was the same type of techniques we would use in Kirby, because in Kirby, we always had one shot in a house. Like, if we could get inside of a house, we knew if we didn't sell the Kirby right then, there was as close to a 0% chance that we would ever sell it as you could possibly get. So we learned, like, basically, and we're taught that you need to be able to raise emotions and create urgency in order to help people make decisions. And actually, the most upset people would be the people that didn't buy the Kirby, because a big part of them always wanted to, like, nah, this isn't a Kirby pitch or anything, but like the machine really was badass. Like it was awesome, but it was also $3,000. And it was also something that they didn't call us. Like, we just showed up on their doorstep, or they got a phone call. So we had an uphill battle. And I kind of see it the same way with wholesale, where you need to be able to create some compelling momentum to get consistent conversions. And you need to do it through a process. It's not a logical thing. It needs to be built in with emotion and momentum. I mean, the logic and the numbers are what hold it all together and what hold it up. But the sizzle and the urgency is what creates a high conversion rate on that pitch.
For sure.
So we have a systematized way that, you know, has worked great for me and for a lot of other people. So it's like, we don't try to reinvent the wheel. We make minor tweaks depending on the personality types and the situations, but the framework stays the same. So that helps gives the consistent result, because they're all kind of coming out of the same funnel. And the people that make it out to the other end are the ones that are looking for convenience, peace of mind, and certainty. And that's what we can double down on.
I love that. Are you, I guess before we go there, why not why wouldn't every wholesaler implement Novation into what they're doing? Like, how come it is that, I talk to wholesalers all day long. I mean, we wholesale 15 houses a week on average, so
Right.
Very few people that I talk to are doing Novations, so like, why do you think that is? Is it too complex? Does it go over their head? I mean, because you see a lot of wholesalers that are pitching a cash offer,
Right.
getting it rejected, and then calling it a dead lead, right? Like, they're not even monetizing on the lead. I mean, for the life of me, I can't wrap my brain around that. I mean, at the very minimum, you would think that they would partner up with a local real estate agent and be like, hey, call this guy. He wants to sell, and give me, $1,000 or whatever. I mean, at the very minimum, right? At the maximum, you would think they'd be doing what you're doing as a tool in their tool belt, So, like, why do you think it is that they're not?
That's a good question. I think it's kind of a combination of things. I think a lot of wholesalers are hammers looking for nails, which I totally get, right?
Yep.
And it's kind of the mentality of being In-N-Out Burger, having your thing that you do really well and just doing a whole bunch of that. And I understand that. But I think a lot of people's perception is the barrier of entry to get started is much larger than it actually is. And part of that is there's a lot of conflicting information going around where they hear from one person, you got to do it this way. Another person says, you got to do it like this. And then there's all this noise. And then people are already, wholesaling's already very labor intensive. So to take away from their business to learn something else, and then there's, paying for getting into a course, dedicating the time to do that. And then I don't know if having a sense of pride of not wanting to go to someone to learn something, that could play a role in it. But it's weird because a lot of people that initially are like, nah, I'm going to pass on that, when they see the results and the social proof over and over, it gets to a point where you're like, why wouldn't I do this? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You see, because you hear it from one or two people, you're like, maybe it's BS. But as you see more and more people adopt it, I think more and more people are opening up their eyes and they're saying, well, once they understand, like, look, you don't have to increase your marketing. You don't have to increase your staff. All you really need to do is learn this new pitch, understand the paperwork, and understand the back end process. And you can plug and play this into what you already have going on. But like all my course students are all already active wholesalers. Like there's not really any new wholesalers that get involved with it. But I'm having people join, maybe 10, 15 people a week right now.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Which, it ain't a whole lot, but it's, over time it adds up.
Oh,
and
for sure.
I think more and more people are starting to realize like they're missing the boat here and they're throwing away a lot of leads that they could be monetizing.
Hey, real quick, I don't know if you know, but I have a totally separate YouTube channel that you probably haven't checked out before. And it's just called Austin Zaback. And I've actually started a new series on that channel where I break down wholesale deals, okay? Wholesale deals that we've done in our business. And I show you step by step how we got the deal, how we sold the deal. I break down all the numbers on the deal, and I even show you the HUD of the deal, so we're not playing around. Now, I don't know how long you've been following me, but I do anywhere from 1 to 2 wholesale deals every single day. And my goal is to get to 100 deal breakdowns on that YouTube channel. So definitely, if you haven't already, go check it out. I'll link it down in the description below. And without further ado, let's just go ahead and get back to the show. They for sure are. No question about it. I'm sure we are, at the end of the day, right? We've done a few novations, but I don't think that, my current team knows how to pitch it at the level you do. So therefore, we're missing opportunity. Theoretically, right? So if we're missing opportunity, there's got to be a lot of people out there missing opportunity there, Talk to me a bit about, so like, you're familiar, I know, the viewer I'm sure is like familiar that there are times, people ask me, they're like, Austin, when should I double close a wholesale deal versus assign it, right? And one of my responses and one of my answers to that question is when you're making so much money that people are not going to like it, right? It's one way to look at it, right?
Right.
There's other reasons why you would double close, obviously, too, okay? But one of the reasons is obviously that, okay? So I tell people, look, if you know, you can typically, like, if you have a buyer, you know, there are certain buyers out there who don't want to see a wholesaler make a bunch of money, right? I know buyers, we have buyers on our list that they're fine paying 10 grand to a wholesaler. They're not fine paying 50 grand to a wholesaler, right? And there are other buyers that could care less.
Right.
You know, and then same thing with the seller, right? There are certain sellers that they'll see the HUD and they could care less. Like, they're getting what they wanted to get. We solved all their problems. They're happy about it, right? And there are other sellers that we still solved all their problems. They're still getting what they wanted to get, and they're not happy about it, you know?
Right.
So when it comes to novation, doing a novation, you know, do you ever run into that problem of, like, because you have to get the seller to actually sign all the documentation, right? So, like,
Yeah.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, they know exactly what you're making.
Well, they see our gross amount.
Okay.
They don't see our net amount. But the gross amount obviously is the higher number too.
Sure, yeah.
So this is why it's very important from the very beginning to set the proper expectations. And like, when we're going through the paperwork, I really focus on, you're going to be receiving X amount. And I say the amount that they're going to be receiving a good 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
And I'll, you know, plant little seeds of, hey, look, whether we make $1, we make $10 million on this transaction, you're going to get every single penny of the $310,000 that you're promised. So setting the expectations, giving them a pleasant experience throughout. And then there's also like a little bit of a buildup when you actually get the offer in. You spin it into a bit of a narrative when you call them back. Like, hey, look, you know, we've had several offers. Everything's going exactly as planned. You know, I have great news. We finally got a buyer that's in an acceptable range. You know, we did end up working with several different parties on this to bring this all together. So, you know, our fee is going to end up getting divvied up in several directions, but don't worry, that's not going to affect you in any way. You're still getting the $310,000 that you're promised. And just so you know, we still have to go through inspections, so there is a chance that they're going to be asking for some repairs and concessions. Again, that's not going to affect you in any way. We're 100% responsible for it. And then I just focus on the things that do affect them. Look, their proposed closing date is, you know, May 15th or whatever it is. You know, I have the offer already ready to send over to you. I'm going to send it over right now. We're on the phone. I'll just verify all this information, and all we need is for you to just sign off on this, just like we originally said. Since they are using a loan, the lender's going to want to see you as the owner of record signing the buyer's offer. That's just going to keep everything smooth and title. And we'll keep you, you know, in the loop about the next steps here. And then we send it through with them on the phone and have them sign off. So I've never once had a seller try to back out, get angry. Again, knock on wood, right? And most of these, you know, we're making like 30 grand, I would say, is like our average like net amount. Sometimes normally it's at the higher price points that we're making more money. And this is just my experience. Like, I'm not really ever making $50,000 on a $150,000 house, right? Where I'm eating up like 50% of the equity, right? Normally it's the higher price point houses that have the higher value, the higher amount. Now, if you get lucky and you just hit a home run deal, I mean, you always have the option of giving the seller more money if you want.
Sure.
And honestly, I think that's probably a good idea. Like, you don't have to be greedy. And I always tell people with these deals, you don't want to try to hit a home run on every one of these. You want to keep the flow coming in and keep the deals going out. Don't get greedy. Time is going to kill all deals. If you have an upset seller, understand something went left somewhere and you're ultimately responsible. And you want, at the end of the day, to make sure your seller's happy. Like, you don't ever want the seller to leave the transaction pissed off at you. That's a recipe for disaster.
Agreed.
And if you do that enough times and you're just like callous, we're like, I don't care, I got paid. Look, you're upset about it. Go write about it on online. I don't care, whatever. Just change my company name. If you think like that, people that I know that are like that, they don't seem to have a lot of longevity in the business.
Yep, I've met a lot of them. Yeah. And I don't know where they went. You know?
They were here one day and then they're off to something else, right?
1,000,000%. I couldn't agree more. You're so phenomenal, I think, at, you know, listening to you talk about the pitch, right? And the narrative and the whole thing. You are really good at explaining it, right? So, like, I could tell you, just by sitting here, like, if I was a seller and you were on the phone with me and I had a problem, you know, like, I had to get out, right? and I didn't want to go through the traditional route, like I would definitely take your offer because at the end of the day, you really are good, even just like on the podcast, like you're really good at talking about it, you know?
Thank you.
I think that's honestly everything when it comes to innovation, if you ask me. Like sitting here listening to you talk about it, I think people could know and understand exactly what innovation is. They could understand exactly the documentation required. They could understand the entire process from A to Z. And if they're not good at talking about it, right? Like if they're not good at talking to the seller, working with the right agent, having the right type of conversation and really knowing what to say, and not only what to say, but how to say it, I think you would fail.
1,000%.
You know?
And that's a big part of the training and overcoming, because it's not like understanding, it's like you have to become. Like you really need to both understand it and embody it, because it's very important. Like, for example, like speaking to the agents. Like if you don't know how to position yourself as someone of high value that's not going to waste their time, someone that they want to know and work with, and figure out how to get them to sell themselves to you, like there's so many different places where things can go left if you don't have a blueprint that you're following. But once you kind of have an understanding, and it's like, for example, like understanding the seller's problems, when you realize the core benefit that they're looking for is the peace of mind and certainty, then you can tailor everything towards that. But a lot of people have it in their mind that the key thing that they want is more money. Yes, they want more money, but that's not, if they really truly just wanted more money, they would go a different route. And understanding the why behind it and being able to cater to that and realize that, you know, like anything, it's a people business. Every business, you're dealing with people. And the better you get at handling the seller and giving them a great experience and setting right expectations and meeting it, that's how you'll leave with a happy customer when it's all done.
Yep. I love that. So powerful, man. I think that people watching are going to get a ton of value, so I really appreciate you being here. Talk to me a bit about like, how should people so you said a little while ago that, you don't got to change your marketing, right? You don't got to change, any of that. You just have to learn the pitch, right? You just have to learn that. So, what types of marketing, I would imagine all direct to seller, correct me if I'm wrong?
Yes.
Okay. Talk to me about what you're doing, because you're doing Novations nationwide, right? Okay. First of all, are there any markets where you would not recommend doing a Novation in?
Hawaii, just because their laws, it's essentially another country. It's probably possible. I just don't know how. New York is a bit of a tricky, sticky, but if you have a good closing attorney and everything like that, but really it's pretty wide open.
Okay.
You can even do them in Illinois, even though you're not supposed to wholesale. You're not technically wholesaling. You're replacing the contract. You're not assigning it. But there's not really a bad place to do them if you have the right people to close it, and there's agents that are competent that are available.
Sure.
That's kind of the major two things, and buyers, of course. So if you have buyers, agents, and a title company or a closing attorney, like you're ready to rock.
Yeah. So then talk to me about like marketing, right? Like, for somebody watching, would you recommend that, because you talk about like, okay, the majority of the people joining your group are already wholesaling, right?
Right.
So, would your recommendation be then, would you be able to say that to people watching that they should learn wholesaling prior to learning Novation? Like they should get a couple of wholesale deals under their belt and then get into the Novation world? Or do you think that somebody could have never done a wholesale deal, go learn Novation, do some direct to seller marketing, and do a deal?
Yeah, they don't necessarily have to have wholesale deals under their belt, but they do have to understand how to market direct to seller, that whole song and dance, and how to bring in the leads. Like if you know how to bring in leads, then you can just plug and play with the whole back end of the process, from when the lead comes in to when you get paid is all covered in the training.
Cool.
But it's just not an intro to wholesaling. And you kind of have to be the right, like if you have zero sales experience, there is going to be a bit of a learning curve.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, right? You want to learn Novations. you want to learn wholesaling, like you're learning a lot of stuff.
For
and
sure.
You're learning high-level communication and high-level sales skills. So the people that I find that are brand new are normally that do well are people that are already high-level salespeople, or have their own business, or they have a high-paying career, and they're looking to just change vehicles and get into wholesaling. And there have been people that have done that where, I help plug them in with someone that's doing PPC marketing, or they hire some cold callers to start bringing leads in. Because bringing in leads, it's not rocket science, right?
No.
But if you have no money, then obviously it gets a little bit, you have to get more creative. But if you have a budget for that, you can plug and play with Novations, fairly
Right
quickly.
out of the gate. What is your favorite direct-to-seller marketing that you do? You talk about cold calling, PPC. Do you do anything else? Do you do both, cold calling and PPC?
So I actually do no marketing myself now. I'm 100% JV deals at this point. So all my deals coming through Instagram. And I got to say, JV deals are the best, better than PPC, higher closing rate on these than any other lead source that I've ever had.
Yeah.
But I'm in a bit of a unique position where I've kind of, put myself out there as the Novation King, right? And I've posted tons of live calls where when the leads come in, right, there's already that built-in trust, and people aren't just sending me any old garbage. Like most of these, the people have already spoke to them and warmed them up. But like for someone that isn't getting JV deals, I would say PPC is by far the best.
You think so? Yeah.
It's because they're pre-sorted for motivation. That's why. And you'll find a lot of PPC leads will fit into this box perfectly, because it's like, normally, if they're filling out a PPC lead, there's some external factor that's putting pressure on them, because otherwise, generally, they would be calling realtors for listings. And you'll find with PPC leads, only a certain percentage of them are distressed houses with a distressed seller. You'll find some, though, where you've got a distressed seller, but the house is not that distressed. Maybe they're willing to take 70 cents on the dollar. They're willing to take a $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 haircut to not have to go the traditional route, but there's still not enough margin for us to take that, sell it to a fix and flipper, and make a profit and have the deal still work for the cash buyer. So I think this is good because, two, it's an underserved market where they're calling all these other people, they're giving them these low cash offers, and then you can step in like the hero and give them the perfect solution.
For sure, which I love, For people watching, like, do you think that there's PPC is such an interesting game, right? Like I've heard, I've had a lot of people on the show that, wholesale at a pretty high level. And, everybody's like, has like mixed feelings about PPC, including myself, when you're first getting started, like, 'cause at one point I'd imagine you did PPC, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So like, do you recommend hiring a company to do it for you for somebody watching? Or do you recommend like trying to learn Google yourself and like figure everything out and do it on your own?
I would say for almost everybody, hiring a company is going to be your best bet.
Yep.
And I would go off of a recommendation of someone that's doing it. And if you don't have anyone like that in your life, I would find those people and get around them, because they're going to come in handy for other things too.
Yep.
Because, if you try to just go, because you can hire someone and completely waste your money.
Yeah.
Like, especially if you're talking to the people that are cold messaging you on Instagram and Facebook.
Oh, dude.
Good luck. You may as well just throw your money away, right? But, and the people that are going to do it on their own, they're not going to listen to my advice anyways. So if you're one of those, like, computer geniuses that just loves to geek out on that stuff, maybe running your own PPC ultimately is going to be the best fit. But just realize that's like a very specific skill set, and it's a moving target too.
Yep.
And like when I worked for Sean Terry, he ran all his own PPC, and he spent a crap ton on PPC. He did it on a very high level, and he did it for years and years. But most people aren't going to have the dedication to get that good to be better than someone that you can just pay a couple grand to do it for you.
For sure. Do you have a budget that you would recommend that people start with PPC? Like, don't do PPC if you can't invest a certain amount type of thing?
Yeah. I mean, I would say you should be able to at least sustain it for 3 months and forget about that money. Like, have enough to sustain it for 3 months without losing any sleep.
Yep.
And you're probably going to pay a couple grand for the manager, right? Probably like $1,500 to $3,000 for someone to run your ads. And then you're probably going to need another $3,000 per acquisition person to have a reasonable amount of leads to get going. So, I mean, you're probably going to want 10 to 15 grand that you're not going to lose sleep over. You're not going to miss any bills. You're not going to miss any payments over. And that'll give you enough time because PPC, too, there's a buildup period.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
You don't just hit the on button and they just start pouring in. Yep. And for a lot of people, too, like Facebook ads and social media ads, Bing ads, that might be a good gateway drug into PPC where you can get more volume for less cost. You're maybe not going to have such a high conversion rate. You're going to have to go through more leads. But when you're newer, that's actually a benefit because you'll get more experience while you're going through.
Yeah, I love that.
So,
do you recommend now you do JV, so I would imagine like you do deals literally in every market, I'd imagine, right? Yeah. But if you were to go back in time and you weren't doing like a lot of the JV stuff and you were just like doing direct seller marketing, right? Mm-hmm. Would you start do you have any like markets that you like more than others? Obviously, you can, because like I'm kind of in the same boat as you, to be honest with you, like on the wholesale side, right? Like we're in every market, like we could pretty much do a deal in any market. I hate Illinois, but like we'll do a deal in any market. We've sold deals in Illinois, right? Like we'll do it if we have to, 50% chance we'll get sued, right? You can sell the LLC though, but that's a different conversation. You put the property under contract in an LLC and you sell the LLC.
Oh, okay.
That's the workaround. But I'm not a lawyer, so don't figure it out on your own. But I forget what I was even. So would you recommend like a particular market? Arizona's obviously, I would imagine, a great market. Are there any others that you would recommend?
So if you're looking for a low friction, low barrier of entry, normally going outside of major markets and going to secondary markets, there's going to be less competition. Mm-hmm. You're going to have a lower lead cost. You're going to have a less sophisticated seller. For most newer people, that's probably going to be a good route to go. Because especially if you're doing like PPC or something, you're like, oh, I'm a new wholesaler in Phoenix. Right. I want to set up PPC.
Yeah.
It's like $300 a lead. It's like a listed property that comes in. Like you're competing with deep pockets. You're competing with the big boys, and you're going to run out of money before they do. Yep. Right. And it's a bidding nature. But I don't know. There's pluses and minuses. The places where it's easy to get deals, you don't make as much money, and it's harder to sell them, right? Like places like the Midwest, locking up contracts, super easy. Ohio, Pennsylvania, all those places. Now, the places where it's harder to lock up contracts, it's much easier to sell your deals. California, Washington. So it's
such
so
a catch-22, yeah.
You have to pick your poison, right? And you want to figure out, like, look, do I want to go somewhere where I can get some early wins and just start getting some deals under my belt? If that's your mentality, I would say go to the South or go to the Midwest. If you're like, look, I'm really focused. I want to get some big rips. I don't care if it takes a little bit longer. West Coast is going to be good for that. East Coast, parts of Texas, closer to major cities is kind of going to be your best bet.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, no, I mean, super valuable. I mean, pretty much same thing with wholesaling at the end of the day, right? I mean, you go in a rural area in the middle of nowhere, finding a cash buyer is super hard, right? Getting the property under contract's not that hard, like we'll get it for like 10% of ARV and we can't move it, We're like, dude, there's nobody out here, like literally, So I totally agree, dude. I think like you really have to. I've never heard you put it that way though, or I've never heard it put that way where like easier it is to get under contract, harder to sell, harder to get under contract, easier to sell. I kind of like that like analogy that you used. Yeah. It's so true, I've obviously talked a lot about it, but I've never like phrased it like that. Another question comes to my mind is like somebody is looking to get in, right? What would you recommend they do to like vet out the agent that they're trying to hire to do the listing, right? Like, because obviously you talked a little while ago, like don't go with like a net broker. But is there any other recommendation that you have, like when you're talking to like let's just say like they're doing a deal not where they live, so like they don't know anybody, right? Like how do they find the right person?
So the first thing I do is I compile a list of all the agents that have sold in the last 6 months within like a 1/2 mile to 1 mile radius. Okay. And I want to find the properties that are most similar to mine. I'm also making note of how long it took them to sell, how close to the original listing price they sold it for. And I'm calling all the agents and I'm interviewing them. So the dynamic of the conversation is extremely important. Like my opener is extremely simple. It'd be something like this. Be like, hey there, Rick. Hey, my name's Rich. I've got a property I'm looking to sell fairly quickly. It's right near the one that you just sold on 123 Main Street. You know, I'm out of state, and I'm looking for a good person that's local there that knows the area to work with me on this and possibly some other deals I have going on. You know, what can you tell me about yourself and kind of what you know about the area?
Hey, really quick, I'm sure you already know, but I've done over 2,500 wholesale deals in my career, and me and my team consistently do anywhere from 1 to 2 wholesale deals a day. If you're looking to get better at wholesaling, or maybe you're brand new, you've never wholesaled a deal, I would actually love to coach you. I would love to mentor you, and I would love for you to be a part of our education program. All you have to do is go to www.flippinsimple.com, or you can find a link in the description down below and book a strategy session with my team to see if you would be a good fit for our coaching program. Again, this is our exact strategy and formula of how we are actually able to go out every single day and do anywhere from 1 to 2 wholesale deals a day. Nobody's talking about what we're doing, and I really look forward to coaching you and mentoring you. So again, go to www.flippinsimple.com. Now let's just go ahead and get back to the show.
So immediately, I end everything with a question to get them to start selling themselves to me. And I do that to avoid the opposite power dynamic where they're asking me a bunch of questions and I'm trying to justify myself to them. So I'll have them sell themselves. One thing I'll also do is I'll always ask them, hey, you know, in your professional opinion, where do you think we would need to price this to get an offer within 30 days? And how quick they get back to me on that. And I don't expect them to give me that number on the spot, right?
Yeah.
And I'll send them pictures and I'll send them all the info that I have on it. But how fast they get back to me, I mean, the first pre-qualifier or disqualifier is, do they pick up their phone when I call?
Right, yeah.
And I don't expect every agent to pick up on the first ring, right? But do they send me a text? Hey, I'm in an appointment right now. I'll get back to you. Do I hear back from them within an hour or two, right? Maybe they were busy doing something. Do they call me back the next day? They just that call me back the next day, I won't even respond to them unless I'm desperate. But how fast they get to me or get back to me is one thing. How they communicate and sell themselves and their sense of urgency and their sense of confidence is another big thing. Because I'm like, look, if they're not confident in selling themselves as being the best solution for me, I know they're not going to be confident selling my house either.
Sure.
But keeping the dynamic on them, and then also crowdsourcing, getting multiple agents to give me their reason why they think it needs to be priced where they need to price it. Because in that process, I somewhat become an expert of that neighborhood. Because I've got 5 agents that have just sold there that tell me all the things that they think are most important. So if I can compile all that and put it in my back pocket, I now know the collective knowledge of all of them.
Sure.
And I've sideswiped that whole process. So like how fast they get back to me with the CMA and their analysis, and then how they justify it also. Because I'll have agents sometimes, they sound great on the phone. They'll give me their CMA and they're including, this just happened recently, comps from 2021. And I'm like, in my brain, I'm like, look, this is great historic value here, but how is this relevant to our transaction?
For sure,
like this, we're living in a different world. So I look for red flags, and then I look for just an agent that's cooperative and just has a good attitude, someone that's going to be pleasant for me to work with, someone that's on my side, that's on board. And because I know, like, I'm going to be in bed with this agent.
For sure.
And when I pick the right agent, I can really just shift everything over to their plate, and they're going to be able to handle it all.
Yeah, you could sleep at night, dude.
Yeah,
you know?
And that's why I give them the full commission. I have people bragging, oh, I only pay my agents 1-2%. You're crazy for paying them the full commission, Rich. I was like, well, you know, my deal's all closed, though.
Sure,
you know what I mean? And my agents all pick up the phone when I call. You know what I mean? And when I need a contractor, they'll call 5 contractors and come back with the best one, and they deliver the result. I don't have, there's a lot of legwork that I don't do that other people have to do.
Sure. Yeah, dude, I totally agree. You know, it's kind of funny. Everybody that like tries to cut a corner, like they never freaking make it long term, dude. You know, well, like you see flippers do it, right? Flippers do it all the time. You know, I'm gonna go with Formica. I'm gonna like, you know, and they really cut the corners, and they're never around for the long haul, right? Right. Same thing in Novations, same thing in wholesale, right? It's always the people that are like trying to figure out a way to like save a buck, you know, that like, it's like, dude, you're in the wrong mindset, bro.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like if anything, like cheaper's not always better. Like, you know, so I love that you like take care of your people, because at the end of the day, like those people are going to be how you make a lot of money.
Oh,
right?
for sure.
Yeah.
And when stuff gets hairy, and I may need them to help me with something late at night or whatever, right? When we're in the trenches, like I want to make sure, like, look, they understand I value them. You know what I mean? I'm going to take care of them commission wise, and I want to make sure they're fighting for me. You know what I mean? Rather than me try to save a couple bucks on the commission, and then now I got to press them harder and use different techniques to try to get them to do what I want. Like if I can just have that good relationship the whole time, they want to help me. I don't have to coerce them into doing anything.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
For sure. I love that, man. Yeah. So powerful. Talk to me a bit about like building your team. You know, you have 4 people now, right?
Yeah.
Do they work from home?
Yeah. Well, one of my guys just moved to Columbia.
Okay. Oh, wow. Cool.
One of them is in Avondale.
Okay.
And he'll come over. My Columbia guy, he used to live in Phoenix too. And they came over to my place a couple times and worked from my pad. But yeah, and then my other boy's in North Carolina.
Oh, wow.
So yeah,
all over.
We're all virtual, and then the 4th guy is also in Phoenix.
Okay, cool. How difficult was it to build the team? You know, there's a lot of people watching. They're going to be like, you know, building a team is extremely difficult. I mean, at least like for me, you know, it took me a long time. I built my team more times than I can even count. You know, on all my fingers and toes. You know, and it just takes a lot of time, I think, to like find the right people. I'd love to know like, if you would tend to agree with that. Like, did it take you time to like find guys that like, because you talked about like the Kirby days, right? And like, I think you said your mentor or somebody told you like, if you want to get rich, right, like you have to figure out a way to standardize and duplicate, right? Essentially, you know, like how can you get somebody else to replicate what you do, right? And I found that to be somewhat difficult over the years, only because it's one thing to put a standard operating procedure together, and it's another thing to find the right person to follow it, right? So, like, did it take you time to figure all that out?
Yeah. I mean, I'm in kind of a unique position where that's pretty fortunate, where the guys that work with me now, they all are graduates of the training already. So they're already bought into the process, where it's not like I'm taking someone off the street and convincing them, hey, you got to listen to me because I know what I'm doing. I'm going to be like, my guys are all 100% commission. And most of them are doing their own deals on the side too. So this is kind of a supplementary thing. So basically what happened was I was doing all the JV deals myself. And I was completely content doing that. Just doing, 4 or 5 deals a month, making good money, chilling on the weekends, having 0 staff, 0 overhead. Like for me, I was living the dream, right? Yeah. But what ended up happening was that people were sending me too many freaking deals. And then like I'd have people DMing me like, hey man, I sent you a deal a couple days ago. I'm like, I'm sorry, dude. I'm trying to get to it. And I realized I'm like, you know what? This like is not an ultimately sustainable model, because when I go on vacation, I'm either working or like I gotta wait till I have like a little lull between like, you know what I mean? I'm like, I don't really have a business. I have a job at this point.
For sure, yeah.
It's a sweet job, but it's like when I'm not working, nothing's getting done. And I just put out that energy in my group of like, hey guys, I'm getting a ton of JV deals. I'm looking for good people that have closing experience, that are, follow our process to a T, because this is what the JV partners are expecting, right? They're sending the leads to me thinking that it's either going to be me or someone that's going to do my process closing the deals, right? And it's very fortunate. Like I've had some great people come to me and we're down and we just connected. They were bought into the process. Like we still do ongoing training, and like for them it's sweet because they get to step in. They've got these hot leads on a silver platter. They get to go right in. They don't have to spend any money on marketing. Like if the property needs to get fixed up, I'll put the money out for that. So they have like 0 overhead. I'm very generous. I essentially split my end of the JV deal 50-50 with my partner. Right? Because I'm like, look, if I want high-level people, I'm going to pay them high-level commission.
Love that.
And they should be making enough money where it's worth their while to continue with me for as long as possible. And when they do outgrow me, and I've had that happen, right, where their business picks up and they honestly don't have time to get to the deals. I wish them the freaking best. You know, that's a great thing. Like, my goal is not to have people working with me forever, but for the season where it is mutually beneficial, absolutely. And I just look at it as like, I have an unlimited pool of people I can present this opportunity to. So if we get to the point where we have more deals than we can handle as the four of us, I can keep bringing people in.
Yeah.
And it's not about me trying to maximize and find people that I can pay less and everything like that. Because I'm like, look, we'll just do more deals.
Yep.
Like, we're pulling out of an infinite pool here of how many wholesalers are there that don't know how to do novations.
Yeah.
The vast majority of them. And we're going to make a crap ton of money before they all figure this out. So, like, you know, I don't know. I'm very big on abundance mindset.
Yeah. I was just going to say that. I was like, dude, you're really abundant. And I love that, you know? A lot of people aren't in the industry. If I've learned one thing, dude, like, I didn't associate with people for a long time, like, in our industry, because I just, like, there were so many people out there that just didn't have, like, that abundant kind of thought process, you know? And they, like, you would see that in the way that they would act and the way that they would, like, you know, if somebody quit on them or quit their team, like, the way they would, like, lash out, you know, or whatever, right? And I'm just like, whoa, like, I did not like that, you know? Because I'm like you, dude. I'm, like, really abundant, you know? And, like, I've had a lot of people leave my organization, you know? And dude, I've had people, like, do all kinds of crazy stuff. And, like, I've never gone after anybody. Like, I've never, like, posted about anybody on social media and, like, called them out, you know? Like, it's just not who I am, you know? At the end of the day, I believe there's, like, plenty to go around, right? Like, you know, we still do 15 deals a week on average, and I've had hundreds and hundreds of people come in and out of my organization, soak everything up, and then leave, you know?
Right.
So obviously, like, there's a lot to go around. Like, what do you have, like, do you attribute anything to, like, that abundant kind of thought process? Like, obviously you did Kirby for a long time, but, like, did you do any sort of, like, personal development, like Tony Robbins? I mean, how did you get to a point where you're so abundant in your thinking?
It's been a process, right? And I have to catch myself because human nature is not to think like that. And I'm not naturally wired to be that way, right? It's something I've trained myself to do. But I lived with a scarcity mindset for so long, and I know how that plays out. And I just really, I don't know. I try to be realistic about it, where it's like, look, you shouldn't. My certainty, I guess, comes from my belief in myself, where I know, like, look, if I were to lose everything I have, I could find a way to get it all back. If, like, my whole staff, like all the guys I work with, if they all left and did something else tomorrow, let's say they got together and decided they hated me and they're like, screw Rich, they stole all the leads and went off to the sunset, I know I could get everything back very shortly. And that's where my confidence comes from, is like, I think when people get mad when people leave, it's because they were counting on one person too much. Like, your business should never be reliant on just one person like that. You know what I mean? And I always just look at it as, I just want what's best for everybody. Like, I don't want, when you try to use people or you try to do something that's against their best interest because it serves you, like, try to hold people back. And I've seen other people do that too in other businesses that I've been in, both in wholesale and other things. And it's just the grossest thing in the world to me, because I've also seen the opposite of that, right? Where it's like, people have helped someone get ahead where it has zero benefit to them, and maybe it even hurt them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I just feel like, you know, at the end of the day, life and karma and energy, and it's just when you put out that negativity, or I just feel like one of the worst things you could do in this world is to try to dim somebody else's light. Because, like, light is such a rare thing. Like, the world is like a super dark place. So, like, when you see someone trying to get better, like, if I can't add to that, I want them to go to that next thing. Because if I try to hold them back, I know, like, the universe will ultimately punish me for that.
Yep.
Because I'm being selfish and I'm hurting someone that I could be helping.
Yeah.
So,
dude, I love that, man. Yeah, so powerful and good for people to hear, you know, like, there's not enough people out there talking about that. You know, I think we live in a day and age where you said it best, like, dark world we live in, you know, and CNN and CNBC, and you turn on, like, any news network, it's just all negative, right? And, you know, we've got to, like, figure out a way to, like, be positive and, like, uplift people. And I'm just like you, dude. Like, I really believe in, like, I call it, like, rings to your solar system. So, like, for me, what I try to do to like retain people are always like, oh, because I do like ultimately retain a lot of people, right? Like high level people too that could totally do it on their own, and it's just because like I create rings. So like if they are like crushing it, like I don't want to keep them in that like position forever, right? So like but instead of them feeling like they have to leave me to succeed, like I'll just have another level for them inside of my organization, right? So it's like, hey dude, like you're crushing it over there, like how about we partner up on this thing over here? Or like how about we do that over there together, So like in order to like pull off that type of culture, for me, obviously you have to be like think really big and always be, doing the next thing. But it's just like a way, like to your point of like thinking abundantly, right? And also just like hooking people up. Like you talk about like paying people really well and just like making sure they're taken care of, super valuable stuff.
Oh,
dude.
for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And if your vision's big enough, they can get everything they want and stay within the vision of the company. Because look, I've tried to do my own thing too. It's like when I left Sean Terry's, like I had a little bit of money in my pocket, so I thought at that time, and I thought, I was going to take the wholesaling world by storm, right? And I realized like, this stuff's hard. Like it's a lot more than just being good on the phones. There's all these different elements, and I found out like most of that stuff I hate to do. And like I found a unique way to like use my skill set and build a business around it. But like if I wasn't doing what I'm doing, I think I truly would be more happy like working for someone and not having the responsibility. Like if I had to have all the normal responsibility that an entrepreneur had, I don't think I'm built for that.
Yeah.
Like I'm like a clock in, clock out type of guy. Like, I don't know, maybe that's to my detriment, but that's how I'm wired. Like when I'm off of work, I don't want to think about work.
Yeah.
And it's more important for me to live an interesting and exciting life than it is for me to make as much money as possible.
Which I love.
Yeah.
Because like it's just like the honest truth. And I think like at the end of the day, if everybody's being honest, like, because I'm like, I guess like what you would call like a workaholic, right? But like, dude, I enjoy not working too, So like, I grind a lot, but like, dude, there's nothing I enjoy more than like going and just like hanging out, like drinking a beer, like, and like putting my phone down, So like, I think that like if people are being honest, like everybody ultimately, because like why be an entrepreneur? The goal has to be freedom, right? Like if we really take a step back, like why would anybody want to risk like everything hypothetically, right? To like become an entrepreneur if the goal wasn't freedom? Because like why make a bunch of money if the goal is just to make a bunch? Because there's no end goal there. Like if you think about it, right?
Yeah.
Because like define what does that mean? I put a lot of thought into this. Like, okay, so you want to make $10 million, okay, and then what? You know what I mean? Like, or you want to make 100 million, okay, and then what? Like the moment you hit that goal, if the goal was just to make that much money, then the target is immediately just going to double, is it not? Like you're just immediately going to hit a 10 mil and want to make 20 mil, like because it's almost like the original goal has to be freedom. Like I think the ultimate thing behind everything is like people want freedom. Right. They want to be able to do what they want, when they want, with who they want, for however long they want. At the end of the day, it doesn't mean they will, but they want to know that they can.
Absolutely.
Right?
Oh, 1,000%. And I think for me too, and this may be the case for a lot of people, like initially, like when I was trying to build my Kirby office, I had a chip on my shoulder and I had something to prove to myself and to the world, right? And like at that time, I was willing to sacrifice it all. Like I will sacrifice it all for success. And I burned through my 20s doing that. And I got to the end and I was essentially in the same spot as when I started. Like I was making, $100 grand, maybe a little bit over that, which I thought was like amazing, right? Yeah. But I was spending $100 grand or a little bit over that. And I was check to check. Like when I started wholesaling, I had like $3 grand. You know what I mean? I had zero money basically. And once I kind of burned through that and got over the fact that I need to prove something to myself, to all the people that quote unquote doubted me, probably subconsciously to my parents, right? Yeah. And all that. And it just became more about living a exciting and interesting life. Then it shifted the way I looked at everything. And that's how I got away from sacrificing everything to get what I want. And that's actually when I became more successful and started making more money too.
Sure.
And being happier.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And let's like, obviously we've been here for about an hour. I want to finish kind of talking about that, right? Like talk to me about, you have 4 kids, for people watching, right? And, you're married, I'm assuming.
Yep.
So, you've got a family, right? And, how do you balance it all? Because I get that, like, you've kind of created is there a switch? Like, are you able to, like, turn it off? Like, are you able to essentially, like, 5 o'clock rolls around, right? And, you're able to just, like, go home and, like, turn it off? Or is there still, like, that thing where you're, like, you're checking your phone? Like, how do you kind of, like, balance everything?
Yeah, well, it's kind of weird because I work from home, right? So it's like I go from my office space to like the next space, like, hey, I'm off. But like I would say for the most part, after 5:30 rolls around, like I'm pretty much done with work. If I need to take an important call, hey guys, I got to take this call. I got to wrap up. Or sometimes I might have something in the evening, like an event, something like that. But for the most part, like I really try to schedule everything in my work hours because normally like every day, like I'll go swimming with the kids, like as soon as I'm done, like I'll do something where I can't work, like my phone's off to the side somewhere. Right. But it is a bit of the thing with working from home that makes it a little weird is, especially with my younger kids, right? I've got a 3 and a 4-year-old. They see me during the day and I'm physically there. They physically hear me. But I can't.
Hey, real quick, I don't know if you know, but I actually wholesale real estate nationwide, and I have buyers all over the nation looking for incredible deals. So if you're a wholesaler and you locked up a deal and you're struggling to find a buyer, I would love to partner with you up on it, and I would love to help you sell it. All you have to do is text me 480-418-5339 and just let me know that you have a deal that you need help selling. Again, the phone number is 480-418-5339. Let me know that you have a deal. You want me to bring a buyer. Somebody on my team will reach out to you right away, and we will help you get it sold. Now, let's just go ahead and get back to the show.
I can't give them my full attention. But the cool thing is like, I do get to see them in between calls and chill with them. And I always explain to them, I'm like, hey, look, this is what you see what daddy's doing right here, talking on the phone like this. This is why we can go on vacations. This is why we live where we live. You know what I mean? And like my older kids, right? I've got a 9 and 11-year-old. I explain to them, I'm like, hey, listen, I understand you're getting this input from school, but just realize, like, look, if you have the right skill set, you don't have to ever work for someone. You can work from home and make tons of money, right? If you get really good at communicating with people and good at providing value, like, understand, like, I know you guys are accustomed to this lifestyle, but this is not normal. Like the stuff that we do every day and the vacations we go on, I was like, look, when I was a kid, we didn't do none of this stuff. And that's also the thing with, having kids is making sure that I'm teaching them the right lessons of like them not just getting accustomed to think that like life is easy and this is how everybody has it, but like we are fortunate. And we do work hard, too, on top of that. We have an element of luck, and we have an element of blood, sweat, and tears that kind of culminated into us being in this position.
Sure.
And teaching them the value of the things that are important to me, like hard work, developing skills. Like I tell them, I'm like, look, I don't care what skill you want to develop, whether it's drawing, whether it's dancing, whatever it is, sports, but you're going to do something. Yeah. Like, you're not going to sit around and watch anime. You're not going to sit around and watch TV all day. You can have some time for that, but you're going to get good at something. And this is what life is about, is getting good at things and becoming useful and find something that you enjoy that you really want to get good at. So I try to impart those things on them.
So cool, dude. I don't have any kids. I'm engaged. And we'll definitely have kids. Soon, I would imagine. But I love like what you're talking about. Like I think a lot of people can relate. I can relate. Of like it's definitely how I want to like raise my kids. Instill the work ethic into them and the whole thing. Because at the end of the day, like you don't want to just like have your kids just inherit a bunch of money and then just go blow it all, right? Because like I think we see that happen all the time, where like, the parents got super wealthy, right? And then, but nobody ever taught like the kids like the value of hard work and like how to like actually continue on, right? And so then you see like, dude, you literally see, I think there's a stat out there where it's like, billions of dollars of like generational wealth will on average get blown within 3 generations. So like, you know, which is wild to think about, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like nobody's teaching the kids anything, right? Or something's going wrong clearly, you know, right? You know, so it's so important, right? That like you do what you do, you know, and I love that, dude. Do you and your wife have any time, like, you know, for people watching, something that I'm always like interested and curious about is like, okay, you know, you're an entrepreneur. Does your wife work right now?
She gets to stay home with
Cool.
the kids full time.
Love that. So,
Yeah.
you know, a lot of people watching, right? Like, they're like, okay, like, how do I make time for like my significant other, right? Like, how do I grind it out as an entrepreneur? You know, make sure I'm giving the kids time, right? Make sure I'm giving my business time, and then make sure that I've got like that special time for like me and my wife or my husband or whatever. Like, do you have any recommendations? Anything that you guys do? You like a date night or anything like that?
Yeah, like we'll go on a date night at least once a week. We like going to comedy shows, going out to dinner. We like going to special events, music stuff. Like for me, finding time to spend with my wife is like, it's super easy because she's like literally my best friend. Like, love hanging out with her. Like literally, like any sort of event I would want to go to, she's already going to want to go there. And it's going to be way more fun for me to go with her, like, than anyone else, really. Yeah. So it's super easy. You know what I mean? Like, and working from home and everything is kind of a benefit. And I mean, I keep my life really simple. I have my business, I have my kids, I have my wife, I've got my small circle of friends, but we don't hang out all the time, me and my friends. Like, we talk on the phone and things like that. But like, I'm very deliberate on how I spend my time because I know my time is limited. And I know any time I give outside of my family, by default, I'm taking away from my family. So anything that I'm doing outside of that, it has to be in alignment with my ultimate purpose. It's not going to watch a game with someone. Like, first off, I don't care about sports.
Yep.
And if I'm going to spend time with someone, it's got to be for a specific reason where we're both bringing something to the table that's going to both further us.
Yeah.
And for, you know, special events and parties and stuff like that, celebrating my friends' birthdays, it's not like Alex Hormozy, like, oh, I ain't got time for your birthday. No, like, I want to celebrate the good people in my life and all that. But I try to be very purpose-driven because I do understand anytime I take away from my kids are only going to be this age one time. So it's got to be pretty damn important for me to take away from my business or take away from my family. So.
Yeah. Such good values to live by at the end of the day, you know. I mean, dude, I think everybody should take something that you're talking about and like try to implement it, you know? Because at the end of the day, like, you're going to live a healthier lifestyle if you're able to do that. You know, I mean, the people that have the most unhealthy lifestyle are the people that aren't well-rounded. You know, like, they're a workaholic, but their health is terrible. And like, I've been there too, you know, by the way. Like, I'm 28, you know, and I've definitely had, you know, seasons of my life, as I'm sure you did when you were in your 20s, where like I've neglected my health or I've neglected like whatever, you know, in the pursuit of like achieving a goal, you know. And then you realize, you know, you get a little older and you're like, and even me, without even having a family yet, I'm already like, oh dang, like, I gotta really like be careful, you know. Like, I am, you know, getting close to being 30 and then having a family, right? And I've got to be careful, dude, you know. So I think a lot of people are going to get a lot of value from that. Yeah, dude, I really have gotten a ton of value from you. I think that what you're doing is incredible. What is, like, in conclusion, one thing that you would say to anybody watching or listening, like maybe even your kids, let's just say that, something you've learned in your life, you know, from the Kirby to obviously being massively, you know, successful doing Novations, that you would kind of give a piece of advice. Like, if you could give, you know, one piece of advice, let's just call it, to your kids, you know, what would that be? It could be life, business, like really anything. Like, what would you say?
So I would say, with anything that you want to do, the important thing is to connect with high-level people on that, learn from them, and if you can dedicate yourself to becoming great at something, just that act alone, you will surpass almost everybody. If you just try. If you just try harder than everybody, you will be able to surpass them. And I think it's really important to get great at things, not to just try to be a little bit of everything, but try to find a few things, dig really deep into that, and become an expert in it. And then you have a unique offering to give the world.
Yeah.
Because if you try to spread yourself too thin on all these different things, you end up not being able to get any traction.
Agreed.
So I think it's important, but linking up with the right people is super crucial because that's a quantum leap. Where if you're trying to be arrogant and figure everything out on yourself, you're going to make all these mistakes that people have already made, that they could just direct you right to the path, and then you could take that path that they lay out and really dig in and get good at it. So,
Such phenomenal advice, dude. I love that, especially in the beginning. I see so many people way too early on, like try to friggin' chase every rabbit, you know? And I'm like, dude, you got to get good at one thing. You know what I mean? and even long term, like you got to be careful not to obviously spread yourself too thin, right? Phenomenal advice, man. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so my main social media platforms, Instagram, at Novation King. If you're interested in joining the Rainmaker course and community, it's novationking.com. Tons of tons of success stories on there. But yeah, the community's growing, and we've got a lot of high-level wholesalers in there, and we're looking for good people to join and contribute. So.
Cool. And you said it was novationking.org?
.com.
.com. Okay, cool. So novationking.com. Is it the novationking.com or just novationking.com?
Just Novation King.
Cool. Okay.
Yep.
And I'll put all that information down below too for everybody watching and listening. And then on IG too, like it's just Novation King. There's no like weird like underscores, anything.
Except no imitations.
That means you're the OG, by the way.
I'm the blue check Novation King, baby.
Because at the end of the day, if you weren't the OG, you'd have to do an underscore, like a little 1 or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You always
underscore real Novation King 23. No.
Right. Yeah. That's how you know it's like you're not the real Novation King, you know, or whatever they're trying to be. Dude, I really appreciate you being here. It's obviously an honor. You know, I really appreciate you bringing the cookies and the things, you know, obviously for myself and my team. And man, I know that people are going to get a lot of value from you being here. So I would love to work with you too. And we're off the show. We'll have to talk more about that.
Absolutely, man.
Thank you. And then if you're still watching or listening, do me a huge favor. Subscribe to YouTube if you haven't already. Smash that like button. Definitely go follow Rich. Rich is awesome. Go follow him on IG. Definitely check out the Rainmaker Academy. And we really appreciate you for tuning in. We'll see you in the next one.